Hello, my name is Marsha Ablard, and today I'm going to be discussing the topic structure and function for my final video project. To assist me in discussing how structure and function correlate with one another, I'm going to be incorporating the lab's integumentary system and histology to unravel the bigger picture of this topic. First, let's understand and define what both structure and function mean separately, and then we're going to look at what it means as a whole. Structure is defined as the arrangement of and relations between the parts or elements of something complex. When I think of the word structure, I think of body structures, which are the anatomic parts of the body, whether it be organs, limbs, and the components that go with them. Function is defined as the reason for some object or process occurred in a system. When I think of function, I think of what that structure is required or made to do for our body. Now, when we combine the two together in shorter terms, a key idea is that structure determines function. Basically, it is the way that something is arranged, enabling it to play its role, thus fulfilling its job in the body. Structure and function are related and understood at molecular, cell tissue, organ system, and organism level. The first lab I chose to align with this topic is histology, and the learning objective I chose to go along with this lab is describe how tissue structure is related to function. I chose this because the lab histology gives an overview of the structure of each tissue of the body and how it is specifically designed to carry out its own function caused by the arrangement of cells and its histological appearance. There are 4 major types of tissue in the body. First, we have muscle tissue. Muscle tissue is divided into 3 different kinds of muscle tissue, which are cardiac, skeletal, and smooth muscles. However, today we are going to be focused primarily on the skeletal muscle. This muscle can be found under voluntary control. Examples of this would be facial muscles and muscles of your limbs, trunk, and neck. This muscle is responsible for the movement of our bones. Next, we have nervous tissue. This tissue can be found throughout the body and is wholly directed in the brain and the spinal cord. The nervous system's main job is to coordinate and control many body activities and stimulates an awareness of the environment and plays a major role in emotions, memory, and lastly, reasoning. Then we have connective tissue. Connective tissue connects structures of the body together, and its responsibility is to support and protect organs. Connective tissue is comprised of 4 types. First, we have adipose tissue. Adipose tissue is important for energy storage, insulation, and protection. Then we have cartilage tissue. Cartilage tissue provides support to our body. Then we have bone tissue, which provides rigid structure and support. And lastly, we have blood, which transports nutrients and oxygen to the organs of the body. Lastly, we have epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue is basically a high number of cells packed tightly together. This tissue's function is to cover surfaces of the body exposed to the outside. Examples of this tissue would be the outer layer of skin, air sacs and lungs, lining of blood vessels, and respiratory tract. Epithelial tissue is named by their shape, cells, and numbers of layers. First, we have simple squamous, which is a single layer of flat cells. Then we have simple cuboidal, which consists of a single layer of cuboidal cells that have large, spherical, and central nuclei. Then we have simple columnar, which is a single layer of columnar cells with oval-shaped nuclei. Then we have stratified squamous. Stratified squamous is flattened and more compacted squamous cells. Then we have stratified cuboidal. This is a rare type of epithelial tissue that is composed of cuboidal cells arranged in multiple layers, similar to stratified columnar, which is also a rare type of epithelial tissue that is composed of columnar cells arranged in multiple layers. Something I would do to just get me to memorize the 4 body tissues is just writing it out on a blank piece of paper. So first I would write body tissues at the top, and then I would number my page 1 through 4. I would write all 4 types of body tissues, so nervous, muscle, epithelial, and connective. And then beside it, I would just write the function of these tissues and just a little picture to go along with it. So for nervous, I would write communication. And for the little picture, I would draw a brain and a spinal cord, because as we discussed earlier in the video, the nervous tissue is wholly directed in the brain and the spinal cord. And just coming out of the brain, I would write reasoning, emotion, and memory, because as we discussed, the nervous tissue plays a major role in these 3 things. And then for muscle, I would write movement beside it. And the 3 little pictures underneath I would draw is a heart, a bone, and a muscle, because as we discussed in the video earlier, muscle tissue is responsible for the movement of our bones, and is divided into 3 parts. So it's the cardiac, skeletal, and muscle. And then for epithelial, I would label it as boundaries, because as we discussed in the video, epithelial tissue, its function is to cover surfaces of the body exposed to the outside. And for the picture underneath, I would draw the different types of epithelial tissues that we discussed. So it would be simple squamous, simple cuboidal, simple columnar, stratified squamous, stratified columnar, and stratified cuboidal. So I'll just draw those epithelial types underneath epithelial so I could get myself to remember those. And then besides connective, I would write support, protect, and bind. And the little pictures I would draw underneath is a bone, fat cells, and blood, because these are 3 types of connective tissues. The next lab I chose to incorporate into this topic is integumentary system. I chose this lab because it gives an overview of the structure of the skin and how it functions to protect and regulate. The skin is organized into 2 primary layers, the epidermis and the dermis. The hypodermis, however, lies directly beneath the skin. First, we have the epidermis. This is the thinner outer layer of the skin. Its function is to provide protection to the body. It also depends mostly on the dermis, which is the layer of the skin underneath it, to provide access to nutrients. Then we have the dermis. The dermis senses pain, touch, pressure, and temperature. It gives the skin its integrity, strength, and elasticity. Its role in protecting the body is to assist in thermoregulation and to aid in sensation. Lastly, we have the hypodermis. The hypodermis lies directly beneath the dermis. The hypodermis is not part of the skin. However, it is important for us to go over because its function is to insulate the body from cold temperatures and provide shock absorption. Examples of where you can find the hypodermis being the thickest is either in the palms of your hands or the soles of your feet. And where you'll find it being the thinnest is your eyelids. Now we are going to go over the accessory structures of the skin. Hair follicles, sebaceous glands, and sweat glands make up the accessory structures. At the base of the hair follicle is where the hair is produced. Sebaceous gland synthesizes oily secretion that lubricates skin and hair, and the sweat glands secrete water-based solution involved in temperature regulation. To help me remember the layers of the skin and what their role is in order to protect the body, I drew out this picture and labeled each layer of the skin and the accessory structures. For this lab, I just found that a visual representation of me actually drawing out each layer was more helpful than just reading about what each layer does. So as you can see in this picture, I just drew out the epidermis and the dermis, and I just labeled everything that I already knew and everything that I learned from this lab. And drawing out this picture really helped with exams. You have now reached the end of my final video project for Bio 162. Thank you.